Hey Dave, you want to be in the video as well? So I was recently in Morocco. I spent the winter in Morocco and rescued a couple of dogs. And since then I've been getting asked a lot on what the process is and how you go about rescuing street dogs from Morocco. So yeah, I went to Morocco end of October last year, 2022, and met a dog there and thought that I wanted to rescue her. So it's a really long process. So I'm guessing if you're watching this video, you're in a similar situation, you've met a dog or you have an inclination to try and rescue a dog. This isn't the dog I rescued, this is my dog Dave. He's from Ireland. So yeah, the first two things to consider if you're going to rescue a dog from Morocco is the time. It's going to take you a minimum of 5 months from the day of your first vaccination to the day you get the paperwork to leave the country. And the cost, and it's going to cost you around anywhere between 250 and 300 pounds. So before you even take into consideration anything else with regards to rescuing a dog or rehoming a dog or adopting a dog, you need time and you need money. So it's really easy to fall in love with a dog without taking those two things into consideration. An alternative you've got is to make a contribution or donation towards any of the animal aids in Morocco. So you've got Moroccan Animal Aid, they're based down in Agadir. They do some amazing work with regards to rescuing dogs and also improving the local dog health. But anyway, so let's say you've got the time and the inclination to go through. What is the process of rescuing a dog in Morocco? There's a couple of ways you can do it. One is through one of the charities like Moroccan Animal Aid, or you can find yourself a private vet. I went down the private vet view, the route of the private vet, purely because I had a connection and it was a vet that I know I could trust. We were based down in Agadir and we had to create an appointment to start the vaccination process, and that also gives us the book of adoption and we can register the dog. So that first appointment is going to cost you around 80 euros, £70, 80 euros, and that's going to give you your first course of vaccinations. It's going to give a health check, you're going to get the dog wormed, and you're also going to get the dog microchipped. It means you need a form of ID to show where you are and your address, and you can get that dog then registered and assigned to you and the microchips done. You then need a second dose of vaccine. Now that can't be done for a minimum of 2 weeks. Most vets like to wait 3 weeks after the first appointment. So 2 to 3 weeks after your first vaccine, you will then go back and get your booster jabs. And that's going to cost you another 20 to 30 euros. After that, this is when things start to get a little bit more complicated, because the dogs then have to have their blood samples and they have to be sent off to Europe to be analysed for rabies and some other diseases and such. Now that can't be done until 4 weeks after the administration of the second vaccine. So you're already looking at almost 2 months before you can even get the blood sampling done and get that procedure underway. Now the blood analysis then takes 3 months. You can't go anywhere until 3 months after that. It doesn't even matter if you have the results back. I got the results back for my blood analysis, or for Betsy and Patch's blood analysis, within about 3 or 4 weeks. But legislation says you have to wait 3 months. So you've got first vaccination, you wait minimum 2 to 3 weeks, second vaccination. You then have to wait 4 more weeks. Then you can get your blood analysis done, because obviously the second vaccinations are all the rabies and that kind of stuff. The blood analysis is going to cost you about 150 euros per dog. That gets sent off. You'll require an email address, a contact address, all that information. Once you've then waited your 3 months, you can then start planning getting your dogs abroad. Now for me, I drove, which made life in some ways easier, in other ways logistically more difficult. Obviously you can also fly the dog out depending on where you want to take them. So say we've got everything in place, you've got your blood analysis, everything is all ticked, the dogs have been approved to leave the country. You then need to get the paperwork, which essentially acts as a passport. Morocco doesn't have pet passports, it's not something they have, so you have to get the paper sign off, and that has to be signed and adjudicated by the state veterinarians. So it's got to be done by a government office. Luckily for me, there was one in Agadir. I know there's also one up in the north So it depends on where you are. You need to find your nearest like state vet office, and then you have to go back to your vet that you ran everything through, or the Moroccan Animal Aid, and you've got to get your paperwork all filled in. So it's quite a large book. You know, there's quite a lot of pages to this. I think from memory, it's around 20 pages of paperwork. Like I say, 150 euros. You will then get that stamped and signed off. The dog will be wormed also, and you'll get a certification of worming. And that paperwork and that worming certificate is only valid for the dog to leave the country within 5 days of the stamp. So once you've got that stamp and that date, you have 5 days to get your dog wherever you want to be. If you don't do it within those 5 days, then they're going to refuse entry for the dog, and that can lead to a number of issues. For instance, if you come in the UK, and depends which port you come into or which airport, some of them don't have kennels, so the dog's going to be put down. So it's really important to make sure that you're all set up and the dates are correct. So for me, I drove to Agadir. I actually went to the vet in the morning, paid the money, which was like £150. We got all of the paperwork signed off. Now it's really important in Morocco, you have to have a photocopy of that to give to the state office. If you don't have a photocopy, they can't process everything. So between leaving your vet or whoever is completing the paperwork, you then need to find somewhere that you can photocopy the entire lot of paperwork. So you arrive with 2 lots of paperwork. So when you get to that office, you need your passport, you need your book of adoption or your vaccination book, you need your full registration certificates from the microchip, and they will then go through, and also the worming certificate, and the office will go through everything. It'll take about an hour in total for them to go through all of that paperwork. Once they've done that, they're going to stamp and sign both sets of paperwork, and they will keep one set themselves, and you get to keep the second set, obviously, for your traveling, which will be the original set. They keep the photocopied set. You'll also be required to send a photograph of the approval stamps and signatures. It's on 2 pages, back to your vet as well, so they've got a record on their system, and then you can be on your way. But like I say, you've got 5 days. For me, I drove up to Tangier and then took the ferry across to Spain, where they're going to go through all of the paperwork there and let that. I then drove up into France, and I took the ferry back from France back to UK. That became difficult, and it's a whole different story then, because some people might say that you need to have a EU veterinary passport. It's not actually the case. You don't need that as long as it's within the 5 days, but they're going to argue that because they're not used to seeing dogs traveling from Morocco. So yeah, that's pretty much what you've got to go through. So to summarize, to make life a little bit easier for you guys, it is a case of, once you have your dog, 5 months, 300 euros. First thing is acquire the vaccination book and get that first round of vaccinations. 2 to 3 weeks later, you'll get the second lot of vaccinations plus your rabies vaccinations. 4 weeks after that, you are then done for blood analysis. So you go back, take your blood analysis. From that date, you cannot do anything for 3 months. So you have to wait for 3 months. Once you've got all of your blood sample information back and you've waited that 3 months, you can then go and get the Moroccan government, like official veterinary state paperwork signed off. You'll need 2 copies of the paperwork, 1 to leave with them, 1 to take with you. As soon as you leave that office, you have 5 days left to get your dog to wherever you're traveling, into Europe or into the UK. So yeah, hope that helps. Saves me a lot of hassle trying to explain it to everybody, having this on video. Going back to the personal story of Betsy and Patch, for me, absolutely amazing dogs, loved them. I could only keep Betsy. I'd never planned on bringing 2 dogs over. It wasn't until I found out that she had the puppy. So it was a really hard decision whether to keep Betsy or to keep them together. A friend of mine had already said that he was, him and his partner were happy to take Patch from day one, actually, from before I even decided to bring them over. He was like, please rescue Patch. They just immediately fell in love with Patch. But they also offered to take Betsy. So for me, it was a better decision to keep both dogs together than it was to split them and be selfish from my perspective. I didn't want to be selfish and keep Betsy, knowing that these 2 dogs had spent their life together and they have the opportunity to continue doing that as mother and daughter. So they're having a whale of a time now. They're in Dorset in the UK. Thankfully, I've got Dave. they're having a whale of a time now. They're really enjoying themselves. Maybe a bit of acclimatization change in terms of getting the weather sorted from the sunshine of Morocco to the British weather. There he is. And this is Dave. They met Dave when we got here, didn't they, Dave? They had their first day in the UK with you. And yeah, good luck, guys. It's a real big journey. It's worth every penny of investment. It's worth every ounce of energy and time to do so. But it's a long haul. And it's, you know, it's pretty draining. There's a lot of stuff you've got to get through. You know, if you're in Morocco for 5 months, then happy days. But for anyone that's adopting or thinking of adopting a dog, it's taking an idea or considering what do you do for those 5 months that you're not there. If you might only be there for a few weeks, how do you then decide who's looking after the dog, who's feeding the dog, who's caring for the dog? So there's a lot of things to consider. It's really easy to turn up to these countries and fall in love with a dog and say you're going to rescue it, but it's not until you understand the logistics and the demands of that, and the realization that it's not as easy as just taking a dog. You know, it's a lot of money. If you're going to fly the dog back, then there's a huge amount of cost associated with that. I don't know what the costs are. Like, say for me, there wasn't any travel costs because they were able to travel with me in the van on the way back to the UK. But if you're flying them back into the UK or anywhere into Europe, then obviously there's a lot of things to consider with that. But yeah, good luck with the journey. The more dogs we can get off the street, the better. But do remember as well that the money it's going to cost you to adopt a dog, that money, if it's put into the local economy or donated to one of the local charities, that money could go ahead to save, you know, several dogs. So sometimes it's having that ability not to be selfish and look at seeing what you can do for the area rather than for yourself or for one dog. But yeah, good luck. Nice one. You.